Hi, this is CK at CK Education. Today I want to talk about what we are able to give to others based on what we have. The truth is, we can't give what we don't have. But so many people try to give or think they are giving something to others when they don't have it themselves. They don't really have it to give. They don't have that, and yet they think they're giving it. This happens in every area of life. In a previous video, I talked about, everybody focuses on, or everybody talks about how it's great to serve other people, love other people. But how do we love other people if we don't have love in our hearts? Unless it's an overflow of the love we already have in our hearts, how could we possibly truly love somebody else when we have none of that inside of us? And so I talked about how important it was that we first have our hearts filled with love so that love can overflow to other people. That's really the only way that we could truly love other people, is to first love ourselves, fill ourselves with love. And I talked about that in a previous video. In fact, in the very previous video. But it doesn't apply just to that. It applies to everything. When people are giving advice, for example, there's really no advice to give if you have not experienced that yourself. If you don't really know what you're talking about because you've never experienced it, how could you give someone advice? You can't base it on some book you've read. And you see a lot of people doing this. I read this book, or I saw this video, or I saw this thing. And so that's and they give advice based on something they've seen, or maybe they saw something in a movie and they use that to give advice to somebody. I think that you can really only give advice on things that you've experienced yourself. If it's merely theoretical, then you don't really know. Okay, so in order to give good advice, I think you have to have the experience. You have to have the knowledge based on experience. And so how do you gain that? Well, I think that first you have to gain knowledge. I think you have to learn. I think you have to spend the time to learn it, and then not only learn it, but to implement, to try it, sometimes to take risks, but you put it into action so that you have real experience. And then whether those experiences end up in success or failure, at least you've learned something from that, and you can give advice based on that. And the more cases you have of that, and the more examples and stories you have in your life about that thing, you can advise other people on that. Okay, what about anything else? When you have a job, how can you do your job well if you have no skills, if you have no knowledge? There's nothing that you can give if you don't have something already inside of you. When you go to an interview, to a job interview, they want to know, they want to know a lot of things. But one of the things they want to know is, are you skilled? Do you have the aptitude necessary to do the job, to perform the job that they want you to perform? And if you don't have that, how could you possibly, you can't act like you can do that job. So how do you do that? How do you fill that void? How do you fill that vacuum? Well, you got to go gain knowledge. And so we go to college. Some of us go to college to gain that knowledge. Some of us work to gain that knowledge. Some of us both work and go to college, or college and go to work, whichever thing it is. But you have to have that aptitude. You have to have that knowledge in order for you to benefit that company. And this is the same in many areas. How are you going to give your kids good advice when you've not taken any steps to become or experience the things that you want to advise your kids on? And so it's so difficult. That's why when parents don't have the same background, or they didn't grow up like their kids did, or kids are not growing up like they did, or it's very difficult that when the parents can't relate to their kids, it's very difficult to advise them. There's difficulties there because sometimes the parents lack experience. Now, you can't go back to your childhood and get that experience, of course, but at least in those cases, you got to do the best you can. You have to at least talk to people who have had experience, or you have to read books, you have to watch videos, you have to learn to see, man, what is my kid going through? And I haven't gone through that particular thing. I didn't grow up in the culture they grew up with. I didn't grow up in the world that they're growing up in, but at least you gotta learn about that world. You have to seek knowledge so that you can better understand them, and so on and so forth. But this is in everything, okay? Even in, you see this in spirituality as well. There are plenty of people who are standing in front of people, exclaiming things, proclaiming things, teaching things, saying things that they merely read in the sacred writings, and but they've not experienced it. And I will admit to you straight up that I used to do a lot of that as well. You know, when I was in Seattle, I worked in a church. I was a youth director for many years, and I will admit, you know, there were times, many times, admittedly, where I was, teaching and explaining things. But I knew that though I had read it, though I understood it in my head, I had not experienced it. And because I did not experience it, I think that I lacked power. There's no power. There's no real passion. I mean, you could have passion, I guess, but the passion isn't backed up. When it's not backed up by experience, it's weak. And so I learned in life, and it's been many years since I did that, and I don't really do that anymore because I don't want to talk about things that I have no experience in. And I don't want to give advice on things that I have not experienced myself. And so this is so important, sometimes it's funny, some of my, because I'm in education, so I teach SAT and college prep and stuff. And some of my students, they'll randomly ask me like, oh, can you help me with this physics problem or this calculus problem? And I tell them straight up, I said, no, I can't. You probably know it better than I do. It's been 25 years or more since I've done it. And that has not been my focus. And I've probably forgot a lot of that stuff. I can teach you about SAT. I can teach you about the things I know. And those I will readily and confidently teach you and guide you in that. But the things I don't know, I don't even pretend to know. But I think this is so important, no matter what it is. Now, there are some things you might be an expert in, but that doesn't mean you're an expert in everything, right? So I might be an expert in SAT, but I am not an expert in physics. I'm not an expert in calculus. Okay, so if you ask me about those kind of things, I would be the first one to say, I don't know, don't ask me. I'm not your person. I'm not the person to ask. So it's very important that we know what we are experts in and what we are not experts in. And that has nothing to do with ego or pride. Okay, the things that we don't know, we should be the first ones to readily admit, I have no idea. I don't know. And it's so important because if you act like you know something when you don't, you're not doing the other person any favors. You are not benefiting that person in any way. It's better to just say, I'm not sure. I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe you should ask somebody else about that. Okay. So let's be very careful in what we try to give to other people, whether it's advice or service or whatever it is, that we make sure that we have the stuff first. Now, sometimes even, parents with their kids, parents sometimes feel like they have to know everything. Your kids ask you something and like you really don't know, but a lot of parents kind of act like they do, or they kind of, just make it up. I don't recommend doing that. I've often said to my kids, sometimes they'll ask me something, I said, I don't know. You don't know, Daddy? No, I don't know. Well, why don't you know? I never took the time to learn that. I'm not really sure. But I think if you really want to know, we can look into that together. We can research it. We can learn it together, or if it's something very important, let me look into it and then I'll get back to you. But it's better to just be honest and act like we know and talk about things that we really have no certainty in. So always remember, we can't give what we don't have. You can only give what you have. Okay, whether it's an inside thing, but whatever it is, whether it's love, whether it's advice, whether it's money advice, whatever it is, we can't give what we don't have. We can only give what we have. So if you feel like, man, I don't have anything, I don't know a lot, I don't know anything about a lot of things. Well, you don't have to stay in that state. You can learn, you could read, you could, experience and keep building that. And do not say, well, at my age. I hate it when people say that, at my age. At your age, what? You're 30, you're 40, you're 50, who cares? You're breathing, you're alive. God gave you today. Then you can use that to learn. You can use that to discover. You can use that to increase your knowledge so that the things that you learn, the things that you increase your knowledge in, and move that into experience, into action, so that you actually have experienced in something, that not only benefits you, but at some point it benefits the people around you because you have something to share. So that's what I would recommend. I think that's so important in life, no matter what your age. And so let's keep learning. Let's keep filling our hearts and our minds with good things so that we have good things to share. So that when we overflow with good things, the people around us benefit from those good things as well. I hope that was helpful to you. And there are links here that on this video that you can click and you can watch many other videos like this. Thanks so much for watching, and until my next video, I hope you stay well.